It was a most unlikely setting for a revolution, a bit, I suppose, like having a revolution in Regent's Park or even on a Boston Common.
Actually, it was a place where the revolutionaries were segregated and kept talking. The Commission of Labor, the Luxembourg Commission, looked into the grievances of workers, heard talk of socialism and end to private property, and the children remained at play outside. Everything here, it was hoped, would be harmless, while elsewhere in Paris the forces of conservatism, law and order consolidated their positions. The statue of Alexander Ledru Rolla on the Hotel de Ville still reminds one of the ambiguities of the revolt. Once seeing a crowd pass his window, he exclaimed, "I must follow them, for I am their leader." A modern note there. In 1848, he called out the troops to subdue the revolutionaries. There was ambivalence even in the selection of the flag. The provisional government rejected the red flag, the established badge of revolt. The tricolor was thought better for the public credit. Such was the revolution of 1848 in Paris. The blood would not be in the revolution, but in stopping it. This might be a good time to reflect on the nature of revolution, what it takes to make a revolution successful. Revolution is a word that comes very easily to our lips. If conservatives knew how hard it is to have a revolution, they would be far less worried than they are about the danger. They're far, far safer than they know.
Three conditions are absolutely essential. There must be determined leaders, men who know exactly what they want, men who know that they have everything to gain, and also that they have everything to lose. They must have disciplined followers, men who will accept orders, won't think for themselves. It's my impression that this also is inconsistent with the revolutionary tendency. People who participate in revolutions do want to think for themselves. Well, that can't be allowed. And finally, the other side must be weak. All revolutions are the kicking in of a rotten door. They're by men who charge ruthlessly into a vacuum. All of these three conditions were present in the Russian Revolution of 1917. All three conditions were present in the Chinese Revolution after World War II. And all of these three conditions were absent here in France in 1848.
Underlying authority was strong and quickly reasserted. Eventually, the workers did leave the Luxembourg, marched to the Pantheon nearby. Then on to the classic gathering place of revolution across the river, the Place de la Bastille, whose tall column commemorates the revolution of 1830. Barricades were erected in the great Paris tradition, and supporters swarmed in from all the city. In the battles of late June 1848, the June days, the revolutionaries were driven back and their barricades overcome. 500 revolutionaries lost their lives in the fighting, and 3,000 more were executed.
Prisoners were taken, and initially they were shot. But the neighbors around objected to the noise, so they were put to the bayonet instead. The massacre extended here to the gardens, and according to legend, in another thoughtful gesture, the gardens were kept closed for several days until the blood was washed away and the mess was cleaned up.
By then, Marx was again on his way. He had never had much hope for the success of the revolution, but he did write its epitaph.
Paris workers have been overwhelmed by superior forces. They have not succumbed to them. The momentary triumph of brutal violence has been purchased with the fracturing of the French nation into two nations. The nation of the possessors and the nation of the workers. The tricolor republic now bears only one color. The color of the defeated. The color of blood.
Marx had been without hope because he thought the revolutionary sequence was wrong.
He was unquestionably confirmed in his view that the bourgeois revolution, the capitalist revolution, had to come first. And then, and only then, could the true revolution of the workers succeed.
Marx went on to Cologne, to another brief job as an editor. In Cologne, he was still a voice for moderation. Let there be no reckless, adventurous action by workers that would lead only to disaster. He was not heard. In Germany, too, revolutionary rhetoric was far in advance of the reality of power, and the revolt was crushed. Still, there was change. Before 1848, the old feudal classes and the new capitalists were in conflict. After 1848, they were united against the new threat of the workers, and they would stay united until the great ungluing of World War I. Nowhere would the Union be more secure than in Prussia, where Marx had his greatest hopes for revolutionary success. Moderate or not, Marx was now sent packing again. He gave thought to going to the United States, but he didn't have the money. Who will say how much he was missed? It had to be London, his last move. He crossed the Channel on August 24, 1849. Behind him were several lifetimes, and he was all of 31. Before him lay three great tasks: forming the ideas that would guide the masses in revolution, creating the force that would bring the revolution, and making a living. All would be accomplished by words from his pen, a literal sea of words. Marx got financial help from Engels and from other friends. There was an occasional inheritance windfall from Trier, and there was the New York Tribune. 1857, when times were lean, the Tribune fired all of its foreign correspondents but two, and Marx was one of the two that was kept. But Marx was a terrible hand with money. Where before his movements were at the behest of the police, now they were in advance of angry landlords and angry creditors. Thus, further migrations, ending up at last at number 28 Dean Street, Soho. Children came, 6 in all, and 3 of them died in the squalid, crowded rooms on the second floor. Marx continued to attract the thoughtful attention of the Prussian police. In 1852, a wonderfully literate police spy sent to Germany an account of the Marx menage.
As father and husband, Marx, in spite of his wild and restless character, is the gentlest and mildest of men. Marx lives in one of the worst, therefore one of the cheapest quarters of London. He occupies 2 rooms. The one looking out on the street is the salon, and the bedroom is at the back. In the whole apartment, there is not one clean and solid piece of furniture. Everything is broken, tattered, and torn, with a half-inch of dust over everything and the greatest disorder everywhere. He is jealous of his authority as head of the party. Against rivals and adversaries, he is vindictive and inexorable. He will not rest until he has ruined them. The dominating trait of his character is a limitless ambition and love of power. In spite of communist equality, which he keeps up his sleeve, he is the absolute ruler